Hi, everyone. I am here with Annette Dashofy. This is our very first Writer Spark craft chat. Annette has been gracious enough to be here with us as our very first guest. So, Annette, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And why don't you go ahead and start by telling us a little bit about what you write?
I write a series of murder mysteries, the Zoe Chambers mysteries. The 11th in the series just came out. I've hit the USA Today bestseller list a couple of times. I've been nominated 5 times for the Agatha Award. Never won, still working on that. And I've got one standalone, Death by Equine, that has just been named a semifinalist in the Dr. Tony Ryan Book Award. So we'll see how the finalists will be named sometime this month. We'll see.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Is that for your most recent book?
No, that's for the one that came out last year.
Okay.
It's for books set in the world of thoroughbred horse racing in 2021. Yeah, it's fiction, nonfiction. There's a kid's book as one of the semifinalists. So as long as it's horse race related, it qualifies. So that was a nice surprise to get that email.
Very much so. So let's start by just getting a little background about your writing journey. So part of what these craft chats are about is to kind of pay it forward. You know, when I first started writing, which was, close to 20 years ago, there was not the plethora of information out there that there is now. And there was not a way to tap into authors like there is now. And if I had half the information then that I have now, I feel like my career might have taken a very different path, or been expedited in many ways. So, before we get started on talking about the villain, which is our topic today, let's hear a little bit about your journey.
Well, I've been writing in one form or another since I could hold a crayon.
Mm-hmm.
But I got serious about writing for publication about 2003, 2004. And, got an agent, lost an agent, almost got another agent, lost another, it's been not a straight line to publication by any means.
I don't think it ever is.
Yeah. And I got my first publishing contract for the first 3 books in the Zoe Chambers series. Signed that in 2013, and Circle of Influence came out in 2014. So it was a 10-year journey to get that first book published. And
okay, but wow. So 2014, and during that time, you have been nominated 5 times for the Agatha Award, and you have 11 books out. That's quite
12,
a lot.
12 counting the standalone. So 11 in the series, and then plus a standalone, plus a collection of short stories, plus some other short stories here and there. So
in 8 years. So, right?
Well, yeah.
That's quite an accomplishment. That's so impressive.
Yeah, well, everybody says, how could you, because the first 3 books came out within 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I had that first one done.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one was about 3/4 of the way done when I signed that first contract. Mm-hmm. And I thought, so I have a whole year to write that third book. That's no problem. But what nobody told me in none of the workshops was that, you're also doing revisions on the first one, finishing the second one. Then you're doing marketing on the first one and revisions on the second one while you're trying to draft the third one. So that first year or 2 was a real learning experience about how publishing works.
Right. And suddenly you're on these deadlines, and it takes a little bit of the fun out of it, of just writing and, following the story where it takes you, because now you have these deadlines and these expectations that put a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, I'm not going to complain about having a contract. But I thought about that because after the 10th one came out, I was no longer under contract. And it was like, well, where do I go from here? And there was a little bit more of that leisurely sense of being able to take my time writing. And now I'm under contract with 2 different publishers for 2 different series. And so there's a little bit more of that hysteria.
Yeah.
Deadline
That's a lot to
hysteria.
juggle.
Yeah. But you know what? After all this time, I think my writing muscles have built up to where I honestly don't know that the writing suffers, by having to meet a deadline as opposed to having all this time. It just, when you have unlimited time and no true hard deadline, I just keep going back and tinkering and tinkering and tinkering. And I don't know if it gets any better or if it just changes at that point.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think we could do a whole talk just about that. I'm very much more successful when I'm on deadline. Deadline works for me, definitely. And when I don't, that's when, like I said, like you said, I tinker, but also the laundry calls, or the dogs need to be walked more often or for longer, or, a nap sounds good. Or
I was doing a lot more yoga and some a little extra meditation. I still do that, but it was more leisurely when I wasn't under contract.
Yeah. Well, what is it? Lucille Ball said, when you need something done, ask a busy person.
Exactly.
To that effect.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know if it was Lucille or not, but that's she's a smart cookie.
True statement. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to jump in and talk about villains. So first of all, tell me why this is an interesting topic for you.
I like, maybe it's, people say that the mystery community, the mystery authors, that readers will say that the mystery authors they meet are so friendly, and I say it's because we get all of our hostility out on the page. So maybe that's part of it, that I enjoy getting into the villain's mindset and can put all of my all the bad stuff out there on the page. But I as a reader, I find that I enjoy reading a book with a more developed villain than one who's just like, a cartoon character bad guy.
Yeah, killing for killing's sake.
Yeah. And I mean, there are people who are out there. I've written a couple of those characters myself who are just, flat out evil. Mm-hmm. But it's also more fun to write, I think, a villain who, as a writer, I can get into their mindset and figure out why, what's behind what's their motivation, what's behind this drive, why do they want this person dead? My favorite, I mean, after 12 books, I've written a lot of villains.
Yeah. Killed a lot of people.
Yeah. Plus, all the red herrings, they have to have motives too. Right. But I have more empathy for those who have maybe a more altruistic. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Too early.
Need more coffee. But someone who has a more heartfelt reason for what they're doing. I've written a couple characters who you almost feel sorry for them. You almost wish they could get off, but no, they killed someone. They have to pay.
The bad guys you love to love. I have written quite a few villains who have killed accidentally, or, yes, not with the malice intention that you see most of the time. And I think that those villains are very fun to create, and also makes the book more interesting to write, because it is a little bit different, and it's a little bit different approach to writing that villain.
Yeah. I'm not going to give away the title because then, it's a spoiler. Right. But one of my favorite bad guys, and it wasn't really a bad guy. He didn't even know that he was responsible for the death. And he was, pushing the cops to find the killer of the victim, not realizing that he had ultimately been the reason, what he put in motion what ended in this person's death.
Now that is a different approach. That's cool.
Yeah. And it's for the readers, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was that guy. Well, yeah, that's kind of that's kind of the point. I also, again, in the series, I like to vary, mix it up. I don't want the same type of person, type of character always being the killer.
Right. Same. Do you consider your books cozy mysteries, or are they more traditional mysteries with cozy elements, or are they not really in the cozy genre at all?
I never thought of them as cozies. That's kind of where I got shelved because of who my publisher was for the first 10. And nothing against cozies. I mean, a lot of my readers are cozy readers, and I love them, and I love cozies. But I mean, my main character, Zoe, is a paramedic, deputy coroner in the earlier books, and now she's had a career change where she is the county coroner. And
which is not the traditional cozy,
not amateur sleuth. And the secondary main character is the chief of police, so they have a good reason for being there, that it's not, again, not belittling cozies. I love them, but it's not the quilting ladies out.
So the bread shop.
But it's small town. And a lot of these
it's kind of traditional, or even I don't know, what do you say?
I call them traditional.
But with cozy elements.
Yeah, Hank Phillippe Ryan called them not quite cozies at one point. It's like, hey, I'm not arguing with Hank.
Right. Who would argue with Hank? Okay. So I actually teach a class on writing cozy mysteries, and the first core lesson is actually developing the antagonist, because I always start with the antagonist, with the crime itself and the antagonist, because when you think about a mystery, traditional, cozy, whatever, the villain really drives the story.
Right.
And tries to thwart the sleuth, whatever that sleuth looks like. And the sleuth is always reacting to the obstacles that the villain throws in the way of success.
Exactly. So, I think it was Earl Stanley Gardner who wrote the Perry Mason books, who said, plot from the perspective, I'm not going to get this quote right, plot from the perspective of the villain, but write from the perspective of the protagonist.
Ooh, that's a great quote.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that one. So is that how you start? Do you start with the crime and the villain?
Well, that's one of the nice things about a series, is you have your protagonists already, figured out. But yeah, I always know before I start writing who did it and why, or should I say who done it, because that's what they are. I know who done it and I know why before I ever start. And then I usually write like the first 50 pages just to kind of get the story going. But at some point there, I have to stop and really flesh out the villain. And what I do, and I teach a class on, the villain's point of view. What I like to do is just open up a document and start letting the villain tell me his story from his point of view. On the page, this is never going to show up because there's just Pete and Zoe that have points of views in the books. So far, I'm toying with, another option. But for right now, it's just the protagonists that have the point of view on the page. But I let the villain kind of just spill his guts to me and tell me, about whatever he wants to tell me about. Sometimes it's, going back to his childhood, what triggered him to, go down this particular path. Right. How does he know the victim, and why does he want him dead? And, just how he plots the murder or whatever. Just, I just waste. It's not waste, because I keep it and I keep referring back to it.
Because all of that is going to inform how the villain manifests on the page.
Yeah.
And how he or she is portrayed and how others see him or her, because all of that, so it's going to come through.
Yes. And it also, I get a sense of their voice. That character's voice really starts to come through. And also, if I'm writing from the villain's point of view and actually going through the actual murder, like writing it out, again, never going to be on the page for the reader, but play it out, then I know what happened and I know what Pete and Zoe are going to find when they get to the scene.
Right. I always look at it and kind of compare it to teaching. I was a middle school teacher for a long time, and we have the idea of backwards mapping. So you start with what you want your students to learn, and then you go backwards and figure out, okay, how am I going to get them there? So you have the end goal in mind, and it's kind of the same, or I believe it's kind of akin to that when you need to start with the murder to know what happened in order for the sleuth to figure out and unravel all of the clues and all of the red herrings to get to that big reveal, to that moment.
Yeah.
So you have to know what happened and how the crime was committed and why the villain did it.
And then there are the pantsers out there whose minds are, because one of my critique partners never knows who the killer is until the very end of the book. Whenever she gets there, she figures out. She'll try to know who that character is, and by the time she gets 3/4 of the way through the book, it's like, nope, that's not the one. It works for her. Her books are great, but I can't do it that way.
I admit I've done it that way, and I've tried to plot really, really carefully, and I've gone the total pantsing way. Somewhere in between is what works best for me. Have you ever changed the villain? There's been one time where I got to the end and I'm like, no, I do not want that person. That person did not do it.
Yeah.
And so I changed it to the person who revealed to himself to be the killer, and then had to go back and make all of these changes. That doesn't happen very often, but have you ever encountered that?
No, I haven't yet. I mean, you never know what's going to happen down the road, but no. And I kind of think it's because of the time that I spend getting to know the villain and really knowing his motivation that, that's never happened. I've always known who and why and where. It just, the trick then is creating the puzzle for the readers and, of course, the protagonists to find out, and that becomes a problem too, without having the old trope of the killer at the end just pouring it all out.
Right.
And sometimes you kind of get stuck and you have to do that just to get the information out there. But you try to have clues along the way so that the whole reveal doesn't come down to the villain pouring his heart out at the end.
Right. Being trapped in a room. Now tell me what happened.
Yeah. I'm going to kill you, but first let me tell you why I did all this.
So when you go through your planning process for your villain, say, okay, I'm going to come up with 4 or 5 potential villains, and which one I circle back to is the one that makes the most sense, or the story that I'm most compelled by, his motive or whatnot? Or do you go in starting with, okay, I know this is my villain and this is my situation, and I'm going to go now and create 3 or 4 other possible scenarios?
I have notebooks for each of my books. And I have pages where I name, these 5 different characters and why they would want the victim dead, and, how they could maybe have done it, and, all the red herring pages. And so
you're a pen and paper note taker?
Early on. Yeah. I'm working on right now for the next book.
That's impressive. Yeah, I don't know. I write so much faster when I type, so that slows me down to write with pen and paper.
It's a different part of the brain, though, I think, because I do all of my writing, and that letting the villain talk to me is all done on the computer, either in a Word document, or I have Scrivener that I use a lot for outlining and for keeping track of characters and locations and such. But it seems like sometimes I'm just a little stuck, and I need to switch to that different part of my brain and break out the pen and paper and the notebooks and scribble notes that way. I do that a lot too when I get to the final revision stages.
So that's a great tip. If you're stuck, to switch it up a little bit that way, maybe try pen and paper, or if you do it the opposite way, to go to the computer.
Yeah. Mix it up. It kind of it wakes up the muse.
Yeah. So if you had to give 3 tips on how to write a villain, what would they be?
this is not rehearsed, folks. So I
I
didn't
know,
have these
no,
questions
this
in
is
advance.
curveball.
Always remember that the villain is the hero of his own story.
I
In his
love
own
that. I
mind.
love the hero's journey so much, and that's
Yeah.
something that I firmly believe in.
That's one. Two, and it's villains and heroes both. I try to remember that every bad guy has a little good in him, and every good guy has a little bad in him.
Right. Nobody is all good or all bad. Nobody, even your villain, they're not completely evil.
Right.
And most of the time, there's a good reason in their own mind why they've done this, but it justifies it, it rationalizes, but they're not just an evil character, because that's very uninteresting and very flat.
Right. So yeah, and it's fun having some, less good stuff, in your good guys' mind, letting them have a little bit of a, flaw.
Yeah.
I don't like totally flawed heroes, but they got to have a little bit of bad in them. I'm trying to come up with a third one. but those really are the two keys that I try to keep in mind as I'm creating the villain. And
okay, we'll leave it at 2.
I'll give you 2.5 maybe, because it's a little bit of what we talked about before. Make sure that your villain has a backstory and a deeper motive. I mean, you've got killers who just fly into a rage because someone cuts them off on the road. And yes, that happens. And yes, that could be a murder mystery. But if they've got a deeper set of motivations, a longer brewing feud or whatever, it makes for a more compelling story and a more compelling villain. I must have said victim. Villain.
Yeah, it makes for a poor victim, regardless.
Yes. Yeah, the victims.
Yeah. Okay, so those are good tips. Do you have a favorite villain that you've written, and also a favorite villain that you've read that always is like, that's the best villain out there?
Yeah, but the problem is I can't tell you who my favorite one that I've written is.
True. Yeah.
Spoiler.
True.
But yeah, I have one villain that I wrote that I honestly fell in love with, to the point where at the end I was trying to, think, can I get him out of this somehow?
Mm-hmm.
And because I also knew that I had to kill him at the end, and I was like, can I somehow, not have that ending? And it was like, no, he's just, he had good reasons in his mind. He had some real tragic things happen in his past, but that's the whole point of writing crime fiction, is that there has to be justice.
Right.
So I wasn't able to let him out of it. Who's my favorite villain? I can think of some favorite movie villains.
That works. Usually they're taken from books or adapted. So
no, I think, well, one of my favorite actors, Alan Rickman. Quigley Down Under. He played the villain on there, and he was just so. And he also in the Robin Hood, but it was the one with Kevin Costner that was just a horrible movie.
Oh yeah,
but he played the sheriff of Nottingham so deliciously evil and funny at the same time.
he is deliciously perfect in pretty much everything that he has been in.
Yes.
Yeah. I love him.
And there was a villain who was just absolutely horrible. You hated him, but he kept coming back in Craig Johnson's Longmire series. He kept showing up, and he was evil to the core, to the point where when he'd show up again, because he would like get away at the end of a book and show up 2 books later, it was just like, not again. But he was very memorable.
He's like Moriarty.
Yeah.
It just never goes away.
Yeah. Oh, he finally, I think he finally met his end. Of course, those kind of characters, you think you kill them off and they can still come back. So that's that's always a concern.
Well, and if they're that compelling and readers love them, love to hate them, but love them, you don't necessarily want to kill them off because they add so much to the story.
Yeah, but he tortured the main characters so badly. It was like,
But isn't that
die
what
already.
back to the books and to the series?
I hope he stays gone, but he was compelling to read.
Well, do you have any parting thoughts for our viewers about villains and writing villains?
Just have fun. If you can have fun with a villain, have fun getting to know your villain. And there's, I think, mugs and t-shirts and such that say, be careful, I'm a writer, be careful what you say around me, because you could end up my next book. I will say that killing people fictionally, killing them is very therapeutic. So,
Yes,
so if people annoy you in your life, put that into your villain.
Has that happened to you? That has happened to me. I can think of one in particular, and again, I won't say which book.
Yeah,
but it is in my bread shop series. And I actually used this person's name, but shuffled the letters around, so created a new name. But it's actually this person's name, and it was very gratifying.
Yes, yes,
to do them in.
Yes, and I have done that, and I again, like you, I'm not going to say which book or who the person is or even what the character's name is,
because our characters do not resemble anyone in real life.
No, only in our minds. But it was funny. There was this person years ago who had really antagonized me to no end, and I was just like, I would bump into him in the streets and like, just, and I put him in a book and had him be the villain, and he got his comeuppance at the end. And I ran into the real person on the street, like, after I'd finished the book, and it was just like, hi, I wish so much, it's like, you're dead to me.
Did you sign a copy and hand it over?
No,
and say,
no, I didn't.
I've wanted to do that. I've wanted to sign and mail a copy to this person, but I don't know the address, so I can't do it.
Probably better that way.
I know. Yeah. Things are working in my favor there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being our first guest on the Writer Spark Craft Chat and talking about villains with us. I really appreciate it. And we will chat again about another topic another time.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.